Welcome into the Wiltfong Whiparound with Steve Wiltfong. Today is Tuesday, May 27th. I'm your host, Josh Newberg. Hope everybody had a fun, quality holiday weekend. Hopefully you spent it with friends and family. Recruits, they spent it on the road. Recruiting never stops, especially on Memorial Weekend. We had top recruits coast to coast taking big visits, and we're going to cover that all today. But first, guys, do me a favor. Hit subscribe to the On3 Recruit channel. If you've watched one of these Wiltfong Whiparounds, do me a favor right now, jump on board and hit subscribe. All right, let's bring in Steve Wiltfong, and we are going to start in Knoxville. 865 Live was this weekend. It's an event that Tennessee does every year. It's always a big recruiting event. And this year, much of the same. We had Savion Hyder, the number one running back in America, on campus. Steve, this one's been a bit of a Michigan-Ohio State battle, but Tennessee, I mean, they're right in it right now.
Well, I've talked to sources around Ann Arbor. I've talked to sources around Knoxville regarding this recruitment, and I get the sense that both those sets of sources feel like Michigan and Tennessee are the programs that have kind of emerged in this recruitment. Now, Ohio State, they would say not so fast. They're getting Hyder back to campus this weekend as they try and make a run at a number one ranked recruiting class. Tennessee looking to push into the top 10 this cycle. And if you look at this Vols football team that played in the college football playoff this past year, a lot of their guys attended 865 Live during their recruitment. This is one that's one of their most successful weekends when they get prospects on campus for this experience. There's no football talk, Josh. It's barbecues. It's talent shows, it's games and activities. You know, it's just like a cookout. Getting the prospects and their families around the football coaches and their families in a laid back environment where they can get to know Coach Heupel and their staff. So Savion Hyder took a visit to Tennessee this spring to watch spring practice, returns to 865 Live for that laid-back, intimate experience. And he was at Josh Heupel's house on Friday. They were able to get to town on Friday, so he did a barbecue at Coach Heupel's on Friday, and then obviously did 865 Live on Saturday, getting around the other recruits and the staff, and left on Saturday evening. I think Tennessee's in the thick of it. They're slated to get the last official visit for Savion Hyder. So these official visits are going to be key. You got Ohio State, you got Georgia, then you got Michigan, then you got Tennessee, then you got a decision. I know that this is tight down the stretch for him, but Tennessee very much in the middle of it for the number one linebacker in the land, or number one running back in the land.
Yeah. Now, these weekends, you know, fans love commitments, but we don't necessarily judge a big visit weekend on commitments. I mean, these guys have decision dates set down the road. They're not changing them just because they had fun on a visit. So that being said, you did put in a new prediction for somebody that was on campus that you expect in the end to sign with Tennessee.
And he's already been committed to Tennessee once. That's North Cobb, Georgia offensive lineman Brandon Anderson, who was back on campus, told me he had a great time getting back around the program, talked to some sources that spent time with him. The Vols lead. It'll be interesting to see if he shuts it down again or takes visits. If he takes more visits, I think Tennessee maybe even moves on here. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with Brandon Anderson, who's already been committed once, reopened his process, comes back and visits. Tennessee is riding number one. Does he commit? Does he take more visits? What does that mean for Tennessee and other targets? But I like where the Vols stand.
All right, Steve, empty the notebook. Who else is Tennessee in good shape with coming out of 865 Live weekend?
Well, look, we started with Savion Hyder, who's the most coveted running back in the country. One of the most coveted players on Tennessee's board has been linebacker Braden Rouse out of Marietta, Georgia. Kel High, he's been to campus a bunch. Tennessee prioritized him before any other program. He feels the love, loves the defense, Coach Banks, Coach Inge, and what they've been able to do. The way that Tennessee has prioritized him on and off the field. They're the leader, in my opinion. He's got Alabama this weekend. Michigan's in the middle of it, so there's some powerhouse programs giving chase, but Tennessee's setting the tone for Braden Rouse. Kamari Blair is an in-state on 300 offensive lineman that Tennessee recently offered. They're making up ground fast. He locked in his official visit to Tennessee for June 20th, kicking Kentucky out of that spot. I think Ole Miss is the leader going into summer, but Tennessee rising fast for four-star Kamari Blair. Some high-profile defensive linemen on campus that Tennessee's got a great shot with. Hezekiah Harris, he's currently committed to Auburn, but I think Tennessee's picked up the momentum the last several months. Tristan Givens, the number 9 edge rusher in the country out of Carver High in Columbus, Georgia, by on-3 RPMs on A&M. But that's a recent development. Tennessee's probably led much of his recruitment. They got him back on campus. Did they bring it full circle? They had a fabulous visit with him. Then you have in-state corner Jamian Theodore, who Tennessee also recently offered out of Baylor School. I think Tennessee's setting the tone in that recruitment. He had a fabulous visit. Carson Snead was one of their recruits back on campus that's been taking visits elsewhere. Ole Miss, Miami, Florida, some of the other contenders. But he enjoyed getting back around the program, the other recruits. He loves the offense. And this was a big weekend to try and help keep Carson Snead in the fold.
Let's talk a little Alabama recruiting, Steve. We got 2 Jets on campus in Tuscaloosa this weekend. Both of them are important. Which Jet do you want to talk about first? The quarterback or the safety?
Well, first of all, I can't believe I didn't even put that together. I'm looking at it on my screen. Jet Washington, 5-star safety, Las Vegas Bishop Gorman. He's the top-rated on-3 industry recruit that's going to be back in Alabama this weekend. It's his 3rd time on campus. Then you have Jet Tamala, Omaha Millard South quarterback, 4-star, top 10 player at the position. It's going to be his first time on Capstone this weekend. Let's start with Washington, one of the most coveted safeties in the land. Alabama's definitely near the top of the list. I would probably give the edge to Oregon going into the official visits, but 3rd time on campus, it's always love and good vibes when he's around. Alabama is swinging for the fences on Jet Washington, one of their most coveted players on the board, regardless of position. They get him back on campus. His family's familiar with Alabama. They have a lot of love for Coach Mo Linguist, Coach Kalen DeBoer, and this coaching staff. They're excited to get back, and we'll see where Alabama stands coming out of it. Jet Tamala, he's committed to Iowa State, gave the Cyclones his pledge in April. Matt Campbell and that coaching staff, the way they've developed quarterbacks, where they stand as a program on the rise in the Big 12, competing for the college football playoff, proximity to home. Iowa State is the place he loves and knows the best. But he told me on Sunday he would be kicking himself if he didn't go check out. He didn't want to be kicking himself down the road for not checking out Alabama. Alabama's coaches went on the road, evaluated quarterbacks this spring. They offered Jet Tamala. They offered Matt Panansky from Cincinnati. Jet Tamala going to visit Alabama this weekend. Then he takes his official visit to Iowa State next weekend. And then he decides, am I sticking with the Cyclones or am I going to roll with the Crimson Tide? And if he does that, he would come back for an official visit. Alabama flipped Keelan Russell around this time last year from SMU. They're looking for similar magic here in 2025 with Jet Tamala. They're getting to know him. They're having regular conversation. They want that face-to-face time on this unofficial this weekend. He's going to spend 2 days at Alabama. He loves the history of quarterbacks there. He loves what Kalen DeBoer, Ryan Grubb, and Nick Sheridan have done with quarterbacks during their career. He's going to get back around them. He spent more time at Iowa State. And the Iowa State coaches are cool. Coach Campbell, Coach Waters, they understand, hey, go check them out. Take your official visit with us next weekend, then make your final decision. But Alabama seems to be in the middle of it for both Jets, Jet Washington and Jet Tamala.
Yeah, the Jets aren't the only big names on campus. We got Booby Feaster, Nolan Wilson, Sincere Johnson. But one of the names that sticks out to me, Steve, is coming in from Hawaii. 6'8" offensive tackle Malachi Lee recently narrowed his list of offers down to just 4. Bama's in the mix there. He's on campus in Tuscaloosa. Do you think Bama leads this recruitment?
I wouldn't be surprised that, he had a great official visit to Georgia this spring. There was a time where I thought USC led. They obviously don't lead. Yeah. Michigan has invested a lot of time into this recruitment, great relationship. There was a time where I thought USC and Michigan were the front runners, so still like where the Maize and Blue are at. But Alabama, getting him back to campus. He had a great experience previously in Tuscaloosa. I think that there's a lot of confidence around the program where they stand with Malachi Lee coming into this visit.
All right, Steve, those aren't the only big names. Who else are you watching this weekend in Tuscaloosa?
Well, you mentioned Booby Feaster. Let's start with him.
Yeah.
Blue chip receiver, number 5 player at the position out of DeSoto, Texas. Return trip to Tuscaloosa. Coach Shepard has been leading the charge in that recruitment. Aaron Hodge has been heavily involved as well. A lot of love for Alabama. I think around Alabama, the feeling is Crimson Tide or Texas A&M. My on 3 RPM still on LSU there. USC is in the picture for Feaster, but Alabama, the front runner for several receivers. You got Feaster. You got Cedarian Morgan, the in-state 5-star, who I have predicted at Alabama right now. And then they're still in the middle of it for the number 1 wide receiver in the country, Tristan Keys, who's committed to LSU, was back at LSU this past weekend, but I expect him to take an official visit to Alabama this summer as well. So they're in the running for 3 of the top receivers in the country right there, 3 top 5 pass catchers, Keys, Morgan, Feaster. This is Feaster's big weekend here at Alabama. Some of the top defensive linemen in the country. Kevin KJ Ford out of Duncanville High in the Lone Star State. It's his 3rd visit to Alabama. I have an early on 3 RPM for the Aggies, but I think Alabama leads. I would not be surprised if my predictions on Alabama coming out of the weekend. Nolan Wilson from Picayune Memorial in Mississippi, top 100 player. Number 3 defensive lineman per on 3 back at Alabama. They were the first to recruit him. They were first to offer him. They lead. Now, Miami is the program really rising. So this is a weekend for Alabama to remind Nolan Wilson and his family why they love Alabama so much. And then they're right there at the top for Titan Davis, on 300 defensive lineman out of St. Louis de Smet. 3rd time on campus for him, his mom, his sister. Michigan, Alabama, I would probably give the edge to, but you got USC, you got Penn State in there. Very competitive recruitment, but Alabama doing all the right things for him. Bryson Cooley is a 4-star offensive tackle from Mississippi that Alabama's looking to make a move on LSU for. 4-star linebacker Sincere Johnson from Ohio, Glenville High, trying to make a move on Ohio State for him. Braden Rouse trying to make a move on Tennessee. Jeremy J.J. Finch, defensive lineman from Indianapolis, where I live, trying to make a move on LSU for him. Those are some of the names. Big weekend. Alabama had the number 3 class in 2025. Will they finish in the top 3 again this cycle? This weekend will have a huge impact on that. They sit at number 9 right now going into the festivities.
You got me all fired up about Bama recruiting. It sounds like it could be another cold summer in Tuscaloosa. Steve has a great article right now on the Crimson Tide recruiting up on the front page of On 3. Go check that out. We got a massive recruiting weekend in the Bayou. LSU Tigers, they are hosting some big-name recruits. And the headliner, 5-star offensive tackle, Emmanuel Ihenacho. Steve, what is the latest between the Tigers and one of the top offensive tackles in America?
Well, LSU had him on campus this spring. It's a program that he could really see himself flourishing. Brian Kelly, head football coach, one of the best offensive line developers in college football. When you look at what he's done historically over the course of his career, the guys that have played for him at Notre Dame and now LSU, some of the best players in the NFL, some of the highest draft picks at the position. LSU fully vested here from an NIL front for Manny Ihenacho. I think this is going to be an interesting visit and what's been a fluid process. Oregon is the leader. They've led multiple times in this recruitment, but I got LSU in the 2 slot coming in. Could they be number 1 coming out? I think so because of what they do on the field. Brad Davis, the way he connects with recruits, the way he develops offensive linemen. Brian Kelly, what he's done historically. LSU's got the number 1 class in the country. I think Ihenacho sees where this program is evolving as a national title contender under Coach Kelly and company. The history of the program, the fan support, again, what LSU is able to show off the field, the opportunities that their players have. They are in a great spot coming into the weekend for Ihenacho. I probably put Penn State in the 3 hole for him right now, but Oregon out in front, LSU right there, exciting position for the nation's number 2 recruit.
All right. Now, quarterback Bo Bentley, we've talked a lot about him on this channel, especially after he narrowed that list of offers down to 2, Oklahoma and LSU. This weekend, the Tigers get him on campus. What are we anticipating?
Well, at the start of the spring, you look like a huge Oklahoma lean. Grew up a
Hmm.
Sooners fan, been there a bunch. He's visited Oklahoma twice in the spring, was the first quarterback that new offensive coordinator Coach Arbuckle extended a scholarship to. But one of the reasons why I do not have a prediction in and why I'm glad I don't have an on-3 RPM in is LSU, the Tigers, the visit this spring, the history of quarterback development, the relationship with Joe Sloan, the support that LSU quarterbacks get to be the best version of themselves on the field, the Heisman trophies, proximity to home. I think LSU is in a great spot. I think there are sources around Baton Rouge that think they lead. They get the first visit this weekend, then Oklahoma next weekend. So it's going to be a battle, but LSU could certainly land Bo Bentley this cycle. They did not land a quarterback in 2025. So very advantageous, in my opinion, for a true freshman quarterback to come in next fall and compete because there is not a rising sophomore in front of him.
All right, Steve, those aren't the only big names in the Bayou. Who else should LSU fans be fired up about this weekend?
Well, I think Jamarian Carlton's the first name that comes to mind, defensive lineman from the Lone Star State. Visited LSU during the spring. I think that they are one of the favorites for Jamarian Carlton. Braden Fogel, tight end out of Ohio, Mansfield, Ohio. He is someone that the tight end, how important the emphasis Brian Kelly's also always had on that position. Joe Sloan and his history around tight end position. Braden Fogel, four-star recruit, Michigan, Notre Dame, Georgia, some of the other programs he is high on, but LSU is in the middle of that recruitment. And then Zayden Krempin, offensive lineman from Prosper High in Texas. I think LSU leads there going into his official visits. And then Drew Evers is another touted offensive lineman from the Lone Star State that they're looking to make a move for this weekend.
It's going to be a 5-star weekend in Columbus as Ohio State gears up for a big summer. They got 3 big headliners on campus this weekend. It's Felix Ojo, Savion Hyder, and Xavier Griffin. Steve, we're going to talk about it all, but start with Griffin because he's back on the market after that decommit last week from USC. Seems like Bama surging, but this weekend, Xavier Griffin popping up in Columbus. What do you make of it?
Well, he's got a lot of love for Alabama, as you said, proximity to the program, family in Tuscaloosa, the relationship he's built with Christian Robinson and that Tide staff. I like where Alabama stands, but Ohio State and Texas are the 2 programs that I'm watching closely after the Crimson Tide. The Buckeyes, where they are at as a program, how they support their student athletes off the field. I think that they check a lot of boxes for Xavier Griffin, who is looking for a place that can develop him into the best football player he can be. But NIL also a heavy factor in this recruitment, and I think the Buckeyes can check all of those boxes for Xavier Griffin. And he's someone that I would be vested in from an NIL standpoint. His talent, his ability to be a pass rush presence from the second level, just the character, the intangibles he brings, the leadership qualities. And so he's got everything you're looking for at the position. Ohio State is one of the programs that can check all the boxes he's looking for. So it'll be interesting to see where the Buckeyes stand coming out of the weekend.
Yeah, now let's switch over to the offense or the offensive side of the ball. A couple 5-stars over there, Felix Ojo and Savion Hyder. Who do you think Ohio State has more work to do with, Ojo or Hyder?
Well, I think that they're looking to make up ground for both, but they're right there for each of them as well. Texas is the favorite for Felix Ojo, in my opinion, also coming off a great visit to Florida 2 weekends ago. But this is a return visit to Ohio State, one of his top schools throughout his process. They're certainly right there. And then Savion Hyder, he took a visit to Ohio State this spring to watch Carlos Loughlin coach the running backs. He loves the history of running backs at Ohio State, from Ezekiel Elliott all the way through this past year with Travion Henderson and Quinshon Judkins. Loves the vibe around the program, winning a national championship. Michigan and Tennessee are the programs that maybe I give the inch to, but Ohio State very much in this race for Savion Hyder, with Georgia rounding out the top 4, all 4 programs getting official visits this month.
All right,
Steve,
who else is going to be in Columbus this weekend that Ohio State fans need to know about?
Well, quite a few guys are visiting Ohio State this weekend. It starts with the pass rushers, Luke Wafel and Jake Krull. Luke Wafel, I think Ohio State's in the top 3 with Penn State and Texas, number 1 player in New Jersey. Florida's one that's been rising with him as well. Same with USC, but the spring visit to Ohio State, sitting down with Ryan Day, Ohio State's history at the defensive end position, again, the way their athletes flourish on and off the field, they are one of the favorites for Luke Wafel. Jake Cruel spent a lot of time in Ohio State throughout his process. They are also one of the front runners for the coveted, extremely long, high upside pass rusher out of IMG Academy. A couple more names of note. Tight end Max Suter coming in this weekend. I still like where Alabama stands there. Illinois is in the mix, Ole Miss, but Ohio State taking their shot with Max Suter out of Illinois. And then 4-star safety Donovan Webb. I think Ohio State is one of the front runners for him. He's back on campus out of the Lone Star State. He's someone I could see in Ohio State's class, one that ranks number 3 nationally right now, but will have a chance to finish number 1 this weekend, crucial towards that push.
Let's talk Miami Hurricane recruiting, as they are in the running for another number 1 player at his position. We already have Jackson Cantwell on board as a Cane. Now they're trying to flip wide receiver Tristan Keys from LSU. Steve, he's going to be on campus this weekend. Can they do it?
Yeah, Miami is the dark horse for On3's number 1 ranked recruiting class. You have LSU leading the pack right now. They're the favorite, obviously. Then you have USC in the equation, but Ohio State in the number 3 slot is an interesting program to keep an eye on for the number 1 ranked recruiting class. But Miami in the back of the top 10 right now, they land Jackson Cantwell. If they can hit big on some of the targets visiting this weekend, they can make a run for number 1. Tristan Keys headlines that list, number 3 player overall per the On3 industry. This is his 3rd time in Coral Gables this calendar year. Him and his family have loved the prior 2 experiences, the vibe around campus, Coach Cristobal and the energy he brings to the program, Kevin Beard, the wide receivers coach, and the way he's been able to develop wideouts, and then the offense, number 1 passing offense in the country this past year, the explosive playmaking ability wide receivers have at Miami, and then again, what the Hurricanes bring off the field from an NIL opportunity standpoint. They are right there for Tristan Keys, who was back at LSU this past weekend, going to take his last official visit of the summer to LSU. He still says it's going to take a lot to flip him from the Tigers, but Miami is one of the programs that I think is right there in the middle of it to do so. Tennessee swinging, Alabama swinging, the Aggies are still in there. Auburn with the Deuce Knight, Mississippi connection still battling. But Miami, 3rd visit this calendar year. You cannot sleep on the U for Tristan Keys moving forward.
All right, speaking of another battle, let's talk about elite running back Derek Cooper, who's from South Florida. But, Steve, all offseason, he's been taking a lot of visits out of state. So where do things stand as Derek Cooper is expected back in Coral Gables this weekend?
Well, this recruitment is one of the marathons of the 2026 cycle, but Miami is equipped to run this race. They got the right shoes, they got the right energy, the right juice, and they're going to be there. Look, Georgia, Ohio State, 2 of the other front runners for Derek Cooper, had a great official visit to Auburn a couple weekends ago, but Miami, this is one of their most coveted targets regardless of position, and they're going to remind him this weekend of all the South Florida greats that have played that position at Miami, and if you look at their depth chart right now, it is Florida guys flourishing in the running back room right now at Miami. Yeah. So I think, look, Miami's the slight on 3 RPM favorite. I like that right now going in to the official visits. There were times where I liked Georgia in this recruitment. I certainly am not sleeping on the Buckeyes, but Miami fully vested, all in on Derek Cooper.
2 more 5-stars we got to hit on. Lamar Brown, big-time defensive lineman, and also Anthony Tank Jones coming off the edge. Where does Miami stand with these 5-stars?
Well, I think for Lamar Brown, they're a dark horse trying to make a move on Texas A&M and LSU. The on-3 RPM favors LSU right now, including my prediction. I think around South Florida, the vibe is A&M might have the edge here. But Miami looking to make a move for Lamar Brown this weekend, one of their most coveted targets at the defensive line position on the board this cycle. I think he's going to have a great visit, so we'll see where that buzz sits after a weekend in South Florida. And then Tank Jones, I think that Miami is very much one of the favorites in this recruitment. Alabama and Auburn have certainly had a lot of buzz, maybe a slight bit more to Alabama. Oregon and Texas A&M also in it, but Miami very much in the race, looking to make another move this weekend for Tank Jones.
All right, Steve, it's going to be a big weekend. So who else are you fired up about down in Coral Gables?
Well, there's so much talent that's going to be at Miami this weekend. On 300 receiver Messiah Hampton, the number one ranked recruit from New York. I would give Oregon the edge coming into the visit, but Miami's probably in the two-hole. Can they flip that? Keyshawn Stansel, an on 300 defensive lineman, as Miami in the top 4. Samarian Wingo's a 4-star in-state receiver. If they're pushing for him, I think Miami could be tough to beat. They're looking to change the tide with 4-star linebacker Malik Morris, who is predicted to Florida on the on-3 RPM, but I think folks around Miami feel like they have a good shot there. They're working to flip 4-star defensive back Brody Jennings from Michigan. His sister runs track for the Hurricanes. They're definitely one of the front runners in that recruitment. Zach Turner from Duncanville High in Texas is coming to campus. Miami just got on defensive lineman Anthony Kennedy, a decommitment from Missouri. Tamarian Watkins is a defensive player that they're in the middle of it for. They're taking their swing at Samari Matthews this weekend. So Miami coming out the gate, starting summer with some of the best prospects in America, visiting campus. They have a shot to finish with the number one ranked recruiting class, but they're going to need to hit on some of these elite guys this weekend to get there.